as I went down to Ferguson, Missouri, right outside of St. Louis, Missouri, to help F. Willis Johnson, I went with righteous indignation because this is a narrative that has been played out in our community far too much. Most recently, because of video camera, we have seen these atrocities that have historically taken place. As I went down there, I went down and wound up with a bullhorn, leading a group of people down the street with that bullhorn that eventually confronted a line of militaristic police that, as I sat down with two women on that tarmac, on that street, while others bounced around and opposed that opposition, those policemen that, like a military brigade, had assembled on line in front of us, sat down for over an hour in that sun to protest the killing of Michael Brown, but the historic killing of our people. There was a article, there was a organization called Al Jazeera that did a video on that day, and they showed as we lined up, and they showed the tension, and they put a tag on the video that they created. They put the tag fault line. They put the tag fault line on the video that showed as machine guns were pointed at the three of us as we sat in the street. They put a tag fault line as that day they pulled literally dogs out that they might be brought by in a truck and bark at us. And they lined up with homicide seemingly in their minds. They put a tag on that called fault line. And I didn't mind serving in that capacity. I didn't mind what happened that day because I knew how serious that situation was. Well, as serious as that situation was in 2014, yes, I deem and determine that what is taking place around the United States right now is just as dangerous, if not more. And it is the fault line of the mind. There is an anti-critical race theory movement that has state legislatures all around the country trying to enact legislation that will, in essence, whitewash history. They are trying to advance anti-critical race theory legislation that says that we cannot tell the truth about where we have come as a country. We have come through some treacherous times. We've come through some painful moments. And it's necessary for us to be able to teach our children not just about the pain and the problems of the past, but we also have to be freed to teach our children the greatness of their past. We have to be able to teach our children that they have come from greatness. It appears that there's nothing new under the sun. It appears that as we are dealing with state legislatures all over this country and even in the state of Indiana that are trying to, put teachers under surveillance and have their lesson plans approved beforehand. They are trying to ensure that we cannot talk about race and we cannot talk about the problems of the past. We cannot talk about these things. The problem with that is that when you don't talk about your past, the old adage says that we are destined to repeat it. And unfortunately, that's this type of regressive legislation that wants to send us back and place us on contemporary auction blocks and sell black and brown people into a system of modern day slavery. Why? Because there's an incarceration that is taking place through this legislation. It will take place, and it will be the incarceration of the mind. This is what we want to do. We want to teach them the language and the literature of the Babylonians. In other words, the first way to assimilate the children of Israel into the land of Babylon was to manipulate their minds. And really, this was to get them to forget where they had come from. This was to get them to forget how they had been marched through a middle passage experience, east, northeast from Jerusalem. And now they were in the land of Babylon, and they were held captive, enslaved in this land. And as they were enslaved in the land of Babylon, they wanted them to forget where they had come from, because that was the first tool for assimilation. And don't look now, but in 2022, it's the same playbook that has been pulled out again. The same playbook that you find from antiquity is the same playbook that is being used right now to get our children to learn the language and the literature only of the oppressor. And what we have to understand is that this is nothing new. And what we need to understand, that this is just as dangerous, if not more, than physical incarceration. Because if you take somebody's mind, if you take our children and make them think that the playing field is level, if you make them think that there have never been any atrocities within history, if you make them think that the things that are taking place right now, yes, don't have anything to do with race, then what you are doing is that you are whitewashing the brains of young people that need to understand where they come from. Understand that this is deliberate. It's dangerous in a time when we have such cultural polarity, in a time when we have cultures that are at odds with one another because of that which has been contrived, not just by one man, but by an ideology that understands that the country is getting darker by the day, and they want to hold on to their dominance. They say we're going to only allow them to learn of the language and the literature of the dominant society. And so that's dangerous, my mothers and fathers, my brothers and my sisters. This is the fault line of the mind. Greatness. We have to make sure that our children not just learn of somebody else's history, but we have to make sure our children learn of their history. In fact, we have to make sure that every child learns to appreciate everybody's history and everybody's culture if we are going to train up the global leaders that we are going to need to have if we are going to be what God has called us to be. Yes.
While most are moving with an abundance of caution, leaders of this community have come with an abundance of concern. We have come because House Bill 1134 is a dangerous bill, and let's call it what it is. It's a racist bill. This bill is a bill that seeks to move away from the truth. And in the midst of a big lie, this perhaps is a bigger lie. It's a lie that seeks to pretend like the atrocities of the past have not taken place. We know that children need to see themselves in the lessons they're being taught. We know that teachers should not be under surveillance. We know that students need to hear the truth. We know that it is necessary, if we are to be the people we are supposed to be, it's necessary for us to hear the truth and to deal with the truth. This is an anti-cultural competency law. This is an anti-truth law. We look at South Africa, and the apartheid situation in South Africa. We saw that there was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that led that country to deal with issues. We need to deal with the truth. We need to ensure that our children are in an environment where they have an opportunity to understand the atrocities of the past, the horrors of slavery, and not simply the greatness of America. We need to understand why and where the lights were turned out on yesterday, so we can release a new creative imagination and have the global learners that are necessary in times like these. The leaders of this community have gathered on today stand in opposition to this bill, 1134, that seeks to take us back. It is regressive and unimaginative, and we've come today to stand on behalf of students, in support of teachers, and in support of the truth.
When we arrived, it was the fourth day in a row that people were marching along this street, just a few blocks from where Michael Brown was shot.